The haunting bus stop. I had always dreaded the long walk to my school bus stop, a desolate place on the edge of town. The trees loomed ominously, casting dark shadows, and the wind whispered eerie secrets through the leaves. But one morning, something changed. As I waited, the air grew colder, and an unnatural hush fell over the area. I heard the distant rumble of an engine, and the school bus emerged from the mist. It was like any other bus, but something was off. The windows were black, reflecting only darkness. I hesitated, but boarded the bus, thinking it was a substitute or an old model. Inside, the air was frigid, and a chill ran down my spine. The driver didn't acknowledge me, and the bus was empty except for a single passenger, a child in the back row. The child was dressed in tattered clothing, their face obscured by long, matted hair. They sat silently, their eyes fixed on me, filled with a haunting sadness. I took a seat near the front, hoping to escape the eerie presence. As the bus moved, the landscape outside grew increasingly unfamiliar. It was as if we were traveling through a nightmarish version of my town, where the buildings were dilapidated and the streets were deserted. I tried to ask the driver where we were going, but my words were met with silence. Panic set in as I realized that the bus was not following its usual route. It was as if we had entered a different dimension, a place beyond the realm of the living. I glanced back at the child, but they were gone. In their place sat an empty seat, as if they had never been there. I felt a presence behind me, a cold breath on my neck, and when I turned, I saw them standing in the aisle, their hair covering their face. I screamed, but the child didn't move. Their hair shifted, revealing empty eye sockets that stared into my soul. The bus screeched to a halt, and the doors swung open. I fled, stumbling out into the darkness. I found myself back at my usual bus stop, the morning sun breaking through the mist. The bus was gone, and the child with it. I never spoke of the chilling encounter, but I couldn't forget the haunting bus stop. A place where the boundary between the living and the dead had been breached. The phantom bus driver. My school bus driver, Mr. Thompson, was a stoic and unfriendly man. He never spoke to the students, and his eyes always seemed distant, as if he were lost in his own world. But one rainy afternoon, things took a terrifying turn. I boarded the bus as usual, taking my seat near the back. The rain hammered against the windows, creating a monotonous rhythm. As the bus pulled away from the school, I noticed something odd. Mr. Thompson's reflection in the rearview mirror was blurry, as if he were a phantom. I tried to dismiss it as a trick of the rain and the dim light, but a chill ran down my spine. I watched in horror, as Mr. Thompson's reflection slowly turned to face me, his eyes hollow and lifeless. He spoke, but his voice was a haunting whisper, as if it came from the depths of the abyss. "Welcome to my world," he said, his words sending shivers through my body. I screamed and bolted from my seat, but the other students were frozen, their eyes vacant, as if they were trapped in a trance. I rushed to the front of the bus, but Mr. Thompson's reflection remained fixed on me, his gaze filled with an otherworldly malevolence. He spoke again, his words a cryptic riddle that sent a wave of dread coursing through me. The bus continued to drive, but the scenery outside had changed. We were no longer in our town, but in a nightmarish landscape of twisted trees and shadowy figures. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. We were trapped in this surreal nightmare. I turned to the other students, desperate for help, but they were still entranced, their eyes vacant and unseeing. I was alone, trapped on this phantom bus with a driver who seemed to be from another realm. Hours passed, and the bus showed no signs of stopping. The rain continued to fall, and Mr. Thompson's reflection never wavered. I knew I had to escape this nightmare, but I had no idea how. Suddenly, the bus screeched to a halt, and the doors swung open. I stumbled out, gasping for air, and found myself back in our town. The other students began to stir, as if awakening from a deep sleep. I never spoke of that day, but I couldn't forget the phantom bus driver and the terrifying journey he had taken me on, a ride into the unknown. The ghostly bus route. My school had a legend, the tale of Bus Route 13, a route that had been discontinued decades ago. They said it was cursed, that those who boarded it never returned. But curiosity got the better of me, and one evening, I decided to investigate. I waited at the abandoned bus stop, the night air heavy with an eerie stillness. When the bus arrived, it was unlike any I had ever seen, a decrepit, rusted relic from a bygone era. The driver's face was hidden beneath a tattered hood, and a chill ran down my spine as I climbed aboard. The interior of the bus was shrouded in darkness, the windows reflecting only the cold, pale moonlight. There were no other passengers, only empty seats that seemed to stretch on forever. As the bus moved, I watched in horror as the world outside transformed. The buildings became dilapidated and covered in cobwebs, the streets empty and overgrown with weeds. It was as if we had entered a ghostly version of my town, frozen in time. I tried to ask the driver where we were going, but their voice was a hollow whisper, filled with a haunting sadness. They spoke of lost souls and a journey into the unknown, a place where time had no meaning. I looked out the window and saw shadowy figures, standing at the bus stops, their eyes empty and filled with despair. They reached out as if pleading for help, but the bus didn't stop. It continued on its cursed route, carrying me further into this nightmare. Hours passed, and the bus showed no signs of stopping. I felt a growing sense of dread, a realization that I was trapped on this ghostly bus, destined to wander the darkened streets forever. Suddenly, the bus screeched to a halt, and the doors swung open. I stumbled out into the darkness, my heart pounding. I found myself back at the abandoned bus stop, but the bus was gone. I never spoke of that night, but I couldn't forget the ghostly bus route and the haunted passengers who had boarded it. A reminder that some legends are born from a chilling truth.